We are live and direct. It reminds me of my days on the radio.
Now what? So what about your days in the radio? We'll start there. Where
Well, I
now
mean,
you was college radio or what's
it was
I'll just I won't step
it
on your
was
story. You
college
can just tell
radio.
me.
It was college radio, so it wasn't like um, it wasn't like I was a professional disc jockey. It was college radio, very fun. Um, at the time, let me see, we were streaming across a cable channel called BCAT. Um, um, let me see what I played music, all types of music. I had local artists stop by. Um, you it in interviewed up and coming hip hop artists, up and coming reggae artists, R&B. Talked about a variety of different topics, everything from kept it light to super controversial. Um, so it was fun though. I mean, we came on. My show came on Saturday mornings. At one point, it was Saturday mornings from like 8 to 10, and then I got a later show from 9 to 11, which was at the time prime time, 9 to 11 late night. That's when we got the booth was hot, the studio was hot. You know, people coming in and out. It was fun. It was fun. It lasted 2 years, 2.5 years. It was a good time.
That's awesome. Now,
Good time.
did you have call in like so?
I did have call-ins. Um, the station call letters was WLIU because I went to LIU.
Okay,
Um, um, I remember at the time Flash. It was at the time
okay.
Macromedia Flash before Adobe bought it.
Mm-hmm.
Flash Flash was the hot thing, and so I remember taking the radio station logo and animating it so that way the mouth would move, and then I would it would we would play around with different drops with the animation of the mouth moving, and obviously sound coming out from it. It was pretty
Who
cool.
wasn't inspired from South Park, or was it the other way that
Yeah.
South Park was
It,
inspired by us and was like, wait, if I just make the mouth go up and down, that'll look like
yeah.
talking.
And look, at the time it served its purpose. It did what it needed to do.
Oh, I agree. I made quite a killing off of Flash, just silly animations. So
Were you did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy my son, my oldest son wants to go into computer animation, a la Pixar, uh, and all those other Disney productions. And so I was tempted to pull out some of my old Flash books, and get him going on, like, action script. And because Flash really broke down the concept of a timeline very well,
oh yeah,
and the twaining and everything else. They did it very, very nicely. So
yeah.
I
If
was
only
tempted
it
to
could run at more than like 4 frames per second and do anything useful, then it would have. I mean, but you're right. It as an animation tool, it was well ahead of its time, and it was. I mean, I loved it.
Yeah, I mean it it served its purpose, and it did it really well, until the whole, uh what was it? Apple started saying that it wasn't going to support it. It was HTML5 started coming in, and then sooner or later, um, it was just ad banners, that was doing it, and then next thing you know, that's it. Flash is dead now.
Yeah,
Although if you look in Adobe, I think Adobe just renamed Flash to just animate, and so they still have this. It's still the same basic interface and everything else. It's just called Animate now.
I firmly believe it was because, and I know there's so much more and it's more complicated than this. It feels like it just Adobe never took it seriously. Like
Mm,
when they bought it, because think about it this way: if Adobe said, "Okay, we're gonna stop creating new features and we're gonna make this higher performing and we're gonna reduce all the security flaws," because that was
mm,
the big issue. Really, what it came down to was security. It was just a giant, like, it was a giant vulnerability, like
mm.
150%. Had they fixed that and made it perform, because the only reason Apple blocked it was because it didn't perform well. It killed the battery, and they're like, no, we can't have people opening up a website and draining their battery. So no, we just don't want to support Flash. Yeah.
Well, listen, look, I will tell you, there's others. You know, there are other things that could probably kill an iPhone battery faster than Flash can, but absolutely, the security vulnerabilities were a big one.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, they were a big one. But I really do. I'm really tempted to teach my oldest son a bit about ActionScript and the Flash timeline and animation because I think it will. It if nothing else, it will probably intrigue him. And then just a little bit of programming. I mean, he I don't think he really wants to get into the hardcore programming stuff, but I can definitely see him getting into the some of action script. Although action script can get really hardcore. I've seen
Oh,
people
oh,
get
it can be, but it also you can like CSS, you can learn just a tiny bit of it and still do a whole bunch of neat stuff.
yes, true indeed, true indeed. And in the meantime, my youngest son, he just wanted to play games. He It's funny. He sent me a link today about let me see. The website is called, or the link is called Buzzy USA. And on articles like, "Do you love video games? Turn it into a career." And I don't know what he wants to do. I have no idea what he wants to do with his life. Either he wants to be a gamer or he wants to play sports. One of the two. If it was
Well,
up to my wife, if it was up to my wife, he'd probably be uh, an Olympic swimmer.
I
And
mean, esports. It's if there ever was a time for it, now is it.
mm, true indeed, true indeed. I would agree. And he brags about being part of a team that's sponsored by a couple, a couple of local shops, playing against other teams, and he's constantly reminding me, all right, Dad, I'm an e gamer or whatever he calls it. I feel like I'm out of the loop a little bit.
That's all right. I think that's part of being a parent. Is you have to be out of the loop.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, because the alternative is you're completely in the loop, and then who are you? Are you
That
a
is true.
teenager?
That is true. Like at some point, I gotta outgrow the loop, right? You would think that I'm mature enough, but look, I'm a gamer at heart, so I don't think I will ever outgrow the loop. I'm just too kiddish at heart, honestly.
There's nothing wrong with that.
So, what about you? What are you gaming right nowadays? What are you playing?
Nothing. I don't have time for video games.
You don't have
I've been squeezing in a little bit of Minecraft, and that's about it.
really? I tried to get into Minecraft. I honestly did try to get into the whole, writing, writing extended code to it and just or building my own
Mm-hmm.
version of it. I don't know. I can't. For whatever reason, I just can't. I don't know how or why. I honestly, I don't. Maybe it's because I don't really see it as a game. Maybe because I really see it as a low level. Maybe I shouldn't say game. I really see it as a low level game. It's not like on the same level as a World of Warcraft or Elder Scroll. And I don't think it was meant to be, but for whatever reason, my mind goes there.
Yeah, it is. It is certainly. I mean, it's a sandbox game, so it is what you make of it. And I don't think so. I mean, lately I've been doing speed runs because it's as silly as this sound, it's mindless and fun, and I don't know. It gives me like you get that feeling of like winning the lottery when you get a really good seed. So you open it up and you're like, wow, everything I need is right here. So it like feels really good, but you're not expected to win every time. So it's like you also don't feel bad if you lose. But I mainly only play on a server with a bunch of other adults. So it's more about the community at that point. And the stuff they build is like they're hardcore players. They play multiple times a week, and like the stuff
Mm.
they build is amazing. And I walk on, I'm like, this is just beautiful. It's like when you walk into like a Lego store and you see all the crazy stuff the professionals have
Mm.
built. Like it feels like that. So I'm like, yeah, this is kind of cool.
All right, all right.
Yeah.
I will give that credit. That does feel cool. I mean, especially in the world that we live in today, it's not like we can, go out and actually build these type of things now. Um, Unfortunately, it's a crazy. I say it all the time, and part of me says it as a joke, but I do feel like look, the world is coming to an end. I mean, like we're just not. It's just a crazy, crazy world. Crazy world. So how does so what do you want to get into? Because I feel like I can get into a lot of things.
Yeah, we
Uh,
we could. So yeah, so I guess now is a good time to kind of get in. So I'll kick off the intro. So the reason I started this is I've been inspired by a lot of different things, and
mm,
everything always comes back to storytelling. I told a different story last week, and I'll tell a different story this time. But one of my favorite streamers and YouTubers is this guy Day9, and he started out as he actually was like one of the I don't want to say one of the first esports professionals, but back in the early days of StarCraft, him and his brother were professional StarCraft players, and he ultimately made the transition into being a streamer. He plays a bunch of different games, but one of the stories that he told was that he didn't have the most perfect upbringing, and one of his neighbors happened to be well off and would invite him over for dinner all the time. And the family would always get together and sit around the dinner table and talk. And they would invite him over, and he would eat with them. And the advice that he was told from that father was, the whole purpose of living is so that we can sit around at a dinner table and share the stories that we had living.
mm,
And not that I necessarily agree that's the purpose of life, but I've always loved the like sitting around a campfire and sharing stories, and sitting around the dinner table and sharing your stories of the day, and sharing stories and sharing a meal with other people. So out came this virtual fireplace or virtual campfire, and I'm sort of going to run this like an interview in a way, in a sense that like I'm going to ask you questions and I want you to just talk and have fun. It can and is a conversation, but in the way it's your story. So what I want to focus on here is your story mainly around tech. Now, it doesn't mean that everything you say has to be about tech. This is about your journey.
mm,
But the showcase and what I want to show is that there are so many different paths for people to take,
mm,
and because you'll see so much like from the blanking on the words, from like the boot camps. So the boot camps are like, no, you got to do a boot camp, and the self learners got to self learn, the college degree, and there's validity to all of those things. So I just want to profile and talk to people about their journey and how they learned, and how it's not necessarily straight. It's not just I went to school, I graduated, everything was perfect.
mm,
And for some people that might be the story, and there's nothing wrong with that either. So with that said, and that's hopefully the longest I talked for a very long time, what is your earliest memory of using a computer?
wow. So the first time I've ever touched a computer, um, you know, it's funny because um, my uncle, um, as I was growing up, my uncle lived with us, um, and so being of West Indian descent, the whole concept of it takes a village usually is taken to a whole extreme level. So and so in a two-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn, it was myself, my mom, my dad, my uncle, and my grandmother in one apartment, and then immediately next door was my aunt, uh, her three kids, and so we were back. So we grew up pretty tight knit. And one day we came home from school, and um, there was this like box in the middle of the living room. Um, now I was maybe, I don't know, in the fourth grade, fourth, fifth grade. So this is, and let me see, this is like, let me see, this is 91, 1990, 91, something like that.
Okay.
So anyway, so I came home and there was a box, and the box had the label Hewlett Packard on it. At the time, I had no idea what a Hewlett Packard was. I, I all I know is we came home, and we went to Catholic school, so we, being myself and my cousins who lived next door to me, we went to Catholic school from kindergarten to eighth grade. So when we came home, we saw this big box. We're like, "Whoa, what is this? Cool, cool, cool!" And my uncle, um, he was just sitting there, just watching us, like trying to guess what's in this box. Um, and then he finally said, all right, let's open it." Now, my uncle wasn't the nicest person in the world. I think he was just a grumpy old man, to be perfectly honest. But every now and then, he showed signs of understanding what it's like to be a kid, I guess. Right. So we open the box, and he's as giddy as we are, even though he knows what's in it.
Even
Pull it
still,
out.
I get giddy when I order packages from Amazon.
Well, you know what? I will admit I get the same way. So he opens the box, and next thing you know, this big, beefy, like, monitor comes out, and I'm like, whoa. My eyes lit up. Like, whoa, what is this thing? I had no idea what it was, no idea what it was supposed to do. All I know is it's this big, like, I'm thinking it was a miniature TV. And then immediately after that, he opens up the other box. Okay, it was two boxes. Open up the other box, and then again, a big square mini fridge looking type of thing comes out, and I'm like, what is this? Right? And then so he goes, let's put it together. So we had like a little back corner space in the living room with a desk and everything, and where we used to do homework. But then it turns out, like, okay, let's put it together. We put the well at the time, we didn't know we I didn't even know it was a computer. So we put it together, powered it up, turned it on, and I kid you not, it was the longest 10 minutes of waiting for this thing to come of my life. I was like, what is going on? But when it finally did come on, and let me see, I think it was, the Windows 3.11, so Windows 3.11, I think it was. When it finally did come on, oh wow! I mean, the five and a quarter discs, um, and just playing around and getting used to the keyboard. I can still remember the first sound of the click. When you press down on the key and you hear the click, and then just the tip. Even it's funny, to this day. My youngest son, when he games, when he goes out to find a keyboard, like every I feel like every year we need to buy a new keyboard. But when he goes when he goes out to find a keyboard, the first thing he does is he puts the keyboard to his ear because he wants to hear the sound, the clicking of the keys. Um,
Well, you have to hear it a lot. You might as well enjoy it.
well, and for him, that's how he gauges whether or not the keyboard is a bona fide gamer keyboard. He needs to hear the click. If it's silent, then I pass. Not realizing that I used to do the same thing. Like I used to sit there and just listen to the sound of the keys. It fascinated me. Um, and so, all right. Anyway, so Um, I I remember being up until the wee hours of the morning, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, and all I was doing was really messing with the system configurations of the computer. At the time, obviously, the internet wasn't a thing,
Hmm.
so I would just click a button, see what it does, change something, see what it does, put it back. Um, I remember one day I freaked out because I didn't remember how to put something back, and it took me weeks to figure it out. I like weeks to figure it out, and all I changed was literally all I changed was the styling of the font on the keyboard. I'm sorry, on the monitor, and it took me weeks. Um, and then when it got serious is once I graduated and I started high school, and I just because of the computer I went into um, the engineering program at my high school, and that's when it really got serious. That's when I started understanding the mechanics, and I'm putting it in quotes, the mechanics of the computer. And that took me, like, that was it. I was off and running at that point. But it was a love at first sight type of thing with computers. Um, it's funny. A pet peeve of mine is when someone asks, "Hey D, what do you do?" And I tell them, I'm a programmer and everything else. I'm like, "Oh, you do computers?" And I'm like, oh, "No, I do my wife. I don't do computers." And when I do
I
my
always have the opposite pet peeve in that people say, "Oh, you program here, fix my printer."
mm, yeah, I'm like, no, I'm not that type of technologist. Uh, so it's no, I don't do computers. No, I don't, like, court a computer and take the computer to bed. That's not what I do.
Oh, there's a lot of jokes in going down
in,
that
in
road,
that
but
one statement, right?
yeah. So, what was the first program you wrote, and why?
The first program I wrote. Now, I um I will preface what I say with, listen, at the
Copy and
time,
pasting is writing. That's okay. We know that.
no, no, no. I'm gonna say at the time,
Mm-hmm.
I was still exploring and being young.
Mm-hmm.
But the first program, like when the one of the well, the first program I wrote I changed my grade. So it was in high school actually, and I changed my grade. Um, Again, part of the engineering program, it had its perks. Um, so I ended up, I hated science. Like science, I, it's funny to this day. The subject of science is one of the most difficult subjects that I find.
Okay.
I just I couldn't wrap my mind around. And when I'm talking science, I'm talking the life sciences,
Okay.
uh,
So like
uh,
biology.
biology,
Okay.
chemistry, um, even earth science. I'm like, ugh, I hated science. So I had a chemistry class, and me and this professor, or said properly, the professor and I did not see eye to eye. Um, and so I did everything in my power to like, look, professor, I just need a C. Just give me a C. I would just stay in the classroom, stay quiet, stay out your way. I'll do my homework. Just give me the bare minimum C so I could pass this class. Um, I even offered to wash his car. Like, yeah, it's like just whatever you want. Um, and finally, when he dropped a dime. Well, I shouldn't say dime. He just flat out told me, "Look, I'm about to give you a D." I said, "All right, you know what? No problem." So I went to my engineering class,
You
hopped on
didn't
the
say I
computer.
am a D. I need a C.
Well,
Sorry.
I should have said that. I should have said that.
I'm bad.
um,
I'm terrible.
listen, I mean, I was a jock in school, but I was, a smarty pants nerdy jock. So I jumped on the computer, um, and at the time, the whole concept of real security on a network inside of a school, I mean, it's not as secure.
No, especially in the '90s. What's security?
Yeah, not as
Passwords?
secure.
Nah.
The whole, it predates the whole concept of social engineering, or social engineering, or social hacking, where you're looking in people's. Well, I shouldn't say predated, because that's what hackers do. Look, go through garbage, follow people around, just watch them, and watch their habits. But nonetheless, after a while of watching this particular teacher's habits, um, I could easily guess his password, easily tap into his network folder, easily change my grade, and kept it moving, no trace. So that was the first program I wrote. It just helped me tap in, change the grade, and then erase itself. Um, it wasn't it. I wouldn't call it a difficult or complex program. I mean, maybe, I don't know if I remember it correctly, maybe 5 to 10 line worth of code.
Okay.
And then
And
after that, I think it really opened my eyes to the power of networking and computers in general. But it was yeah, it was eye opening.
now you mentioned that you took the engineering track in high school.
Hmm.
So what sorts of classes did you take in there that struck with you most?
Oh, my favorite class in engineering. What's funny? My favorite engineering class was not the computer engineering class. Actually, I hated the computer engineering class.
Okay.
'Cause, Um, I didn't particularly like the teacher. I think he did a mm, horrible job illustrating the true power of what a computer can do. My favorite engineering class was robotics, um, and we used to build. We would build all sorts of robots, and then when we actually we use hydraulics to. Maybe I'm not even saying it right. It's probably not hydraulics. I think because we powered the robots using all these different levers, and the levers themselves we would use like water, I guess,
Yep,
to
that's
so
hydraulics.
hydraulics. Okay,
Yep.
so that was extremely fun. At one point in time, it actually influenced me, or made me think about going into AI, just so I could build robots and give it some further intelligence. But uh, yeah, I don't know why I never really got into the whole AI world. Um, so yeah, but anyway, the robotics class sorry, the robotics class was the most interesting for me.
Okay.
Um, we would obviously we would it was high school, so we did local competitions. Um, we had competitions in the school itself, you know. But then the more I think about it, the more I'm like, well, I mean, this is an inner city school in New York City in Brooklyn. You know, um, we weren't really into doing all these different local competitions. Honestly, if it wasn't some type of sport, whether football, basketball, we had a pretty decent baseball team too. Um, we weren't really paying attention. But you know, um, in hindsight, it was still um, an effective means to really get us engaged were these competitions, right? So it was fun, but I really at the time, I mean, like, if anyone told me that, look, no, you'd probably forego the robotics piece and jump into computer programming. I don't think I would have believed the person, but clearly that's what I did. It was fun though. I will admit it was fun.
Okay. And now, when you were choosing college, so what major did you ultimately choose, and what were you thinking your was going to be your direction going into college?
Huh. So that's a loaded question.
Yes, yes, it is.
Loaded question. So played football um, throughout my high school career. Um, so college for me was visiting some D1 colleges, D1 AA colleges for football, for sports, right? I mean, I narrowed it down to a couple of different schools. uh, some local, some not. Um, Pittsburgh, Ohio State, Syracuse, and then local there was Hofstra. So you know I narrowed it down. I know my mom, she really wanted me to go away. Um,
She didn't like you that much.
yeah, she ain't like. I'm lying. If my wife was here, she'd probably and I love my wife. My wife is just as animated, but if my wife was here, she'd tell you, "Oh my gosh, he's a mama's boy," and I would look at her like, "No, she's crazy." No, I'm not. Um,
I'll believe your wife.
oh, how dare you, sir? um, but yeah, my mom really wanted me to go away. Um, a couple of different things happened. One, I hurt my knee really bad the summer before I was supposed to start college, so uh, it didn't really quite work out. Um, so I ended up really ultimately not going West, and I ended up going to LIU and in Brooklyn. And when I did that, um, the doctor at the time was like, "Look, you could try to continue playing sports, or you could walk."
Hmm.
So I'm like, maybe I'll walk. Like, maybe I'll walk. So, um, it's bro. I'll tell you a story about that. But when I got to LIU, the question was, okay, so what do you want to major in? Believe it or not, my first choice in majoring, my first major that I was looking into was not computer science. I was looking into audio production at first. I really, really enjoy music. Um, didn't, but the more I looked into it, the more I'm like, no, I'm okay, never mind. I even entertained, hey, maybe let me look into the medical piece. But LIU wasn't really known for their
Okay.
medical program, so and so left that. And then I went into computer science, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, yeah. Let me, and I started reading up into what's involved, the type of classes, and I was like, oh, hell yeah, I'll do this.
Okay. So
Um,
now, was that? Did you? I don't know how LIU is set up. I know some schools you don't have to pick a major until like your second year. So
yeah,
did you have to pick going in, or was that something you picked
yeah.
later on?
No, no, no. So LIU is pretty much the same way. I mean, you don't really need to pick it until your second year. Um, some people don't pick at all, so they just stick with liberal arts. Um, no, but I picked it going in. I did not want to waste time, so I knocked out my bachelor's in 4 years. I could have done it sooner, but I purposely slowed down just so I don't so I could graduate on time with my best friend. Um, so knocked out my bachelor's in 4 years, knocked out my master's immediately after that in two. Um, so I did not want to waste time. Um, just the same, much the same. After I received my master's degree, I was in telecommunications, um, which is pretty much the networking piece of computer technology. With a bachelor's in computer science, a master's in telecom, I was like, oh, you know what? I'm pretty good. I don't really want to learn anything else. And now years later, you know, going going after my PhD or doctorate in data science. Um, I, I I I blame my wife. I blame my wife.
So just a heads up, your video, you're sliding out of the frame a bit.
Oh, sorry.
There you go. Now you're nice and centered.
Sorry.
So during college, did you? Because I know you had some hobbies. We were talking about them, I guess, pre-show. I don't know how to really section anything of this out, but you were talking about how you were a DJ and you did some flash animation. So, how are some ways that technology and software development kind of intersected with your other interests and activities, and when was it music or whatever driving your desire to do tech, or tech driving your desire to try some, like, so how did that play out beyond the just the homework assignments?
Um, you know, it's funny. And I look at my oldest son, and I see a lot of me in him, um, because it what to answer your question, um, it's that I love computer animation.
Mm-hmm.
I loved, and then so when I got a chance to um, play on the radio station, so be an on air personality on a radio station. Again, keep in mind, like I said, my first major was music. I was really interested in that, but I didn't quite see a career in it for me. And then I went to computer science, and then but because I love music so much, I scratched that itch of being around music by being an on air personality. Nat my natural habit, just by pure habit. So you know what? I'm gonna find a way to incorporate the two. So which is why I started playing around, like I told you, with Flash, and then I took the radio station logo, and I started animating that. I started writing action script to do even more things with the logo, like making the eyes blink. Because
Mm-hmm.
if I could bring up the logo, I will. But making the eyes blink, um, Making because the mouth was really like the symbols of sound waves,
Okay.
right? So making that sort of move, and not really using the tweening frames of Flash, but really using the action script to do it. And then um, going from oh, we're about to get serious with music, and then the crunchy eyes or whatever, so the eyebrows and everything of the logo to a logo that's basically laughing and a little bit jolly. And sometimes, depending on the season, if it was Christmas, then I would have like snowflakes falling, stuff like that. So all of that done with the radio station's logo, um, using programming, again, action script. So you know it's funny. It allowed me to get creative, and at the same time, because I was able to do that, I ended up being a real popular disc jockey, not because of my personality, but because of the
Nope, not the personality.
not the personality. Yeah. eh, um, you know, uh, I'm in my mind. I'm like, yeah, this is the cornball in me, because you know my wife tells me I'm a clumsy cornball all the time. So I guess the personality, the cornball clumsiness in me came out, and people like, maybe this jockey isn't really for you, or although that's what I think they said. They never really outrightly said that, but that's what in my mind, in my head, that's what I'm hearing. Because my popularity grew, again, not because of my personality on air. It grew because of the type of effects that I was doing with the logo, um, and some of the visuals that we did. Keep in
I
mind,
don't think that's
we,
true.
we well, keep in mind, we were on BCAT, which is a cable station too. So a lot of the promos that we dropped had visual cues.
I
So
mean,
they
the
were
Google Doodles are fun, but
Google Doodles
when
are
you
fun.
find me somebody who says I wouldn't use Google if it wasn't for those doodles,
For a very long time, I had no idea um, that those existed. I don't even know when they started. Uh,
yeah, I actually I don't think I can recall, but yeah, it's so again, they're a nice thing, and I think there are probably people who would come and check Google just to see what the doodle is.
mm.
But yeah, so what was your first experience using the internet, and when did you realize it was like a big thing?
My first experience using the internet
You don't
was
have to tell me what you
AOL.
did, but
No, it was AOL. Um, um, Actually, it was AOL chat rooms that opened my eyes, or even introduced me to the concept of the dark web, and that's when it was on and popping. Like, it was crazy from that point on. But being a quote unquote hacker, wasn't that intro was made to me very quickly with AOL, and I remember opening that can of worms, and the next thing you know, every week I was getting the typical AOL discs, um, and every week I was popping in that disc into my Hewlett Packard PC,
now,
unplugging the
how
phone.
old were you? Let's set the stage.
So
Because I
I
mean,
was
from the story, it could be anywhere between
no,
fifth
no, yeah,
grade and
you're
being
right, you're right.
9 and
You're right.
being
You're right.
14 and being in
You're
high
right.
school.
So this is I'm still in high school.
Okay,
I am a sophomore in high school, a 10th grader in high
okay.
school. So I graduated elementary school. I graduated eighth grade in '94. So I am in sophomore year. This is 96, 97. So like right at the cuffs of the internet
Mm-hmm.
booming. Um, with AOL doing it, AOL really taking the whole chat experience, the whole chat room,
Mm-hmm.
uh, into a whole new level. This is I went from using a 14.4 modem to a 36.6
Mm-hmm.
to 56K modem. So the technology, and at the time it felt like, oh my god, this is so slow, but really, like, within months, I mean, blink of an eye, boom, 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 that like the speed increased. um, so I remember, um, pulling the phone cord out, you know, taking it out of the phone and plugging it into the computer. I did it so much that my mom was like, "Forget it. We she was tempted to get a separate line because I was like disconnecting the cable from the phone. But anyway, um, and I remember just dialing in and spending hours. I I didn't realize at the time that the phone bill, I should have, but the phone bill was connected to me dialing into AOL. Duh, especially since part of the dialing to AOL was you had to find a phone number that would allow you to connect. I mean, I don't know if people even remember that, but it wasn't as simple as double clicking the AOL icon, right? So no, you would open up AOL, and then there was like a laundry list of phone numbers that you would have to select
Mm-hmm.
right? You have to select that phone number, and then it will dial, right? So and you would hit. That's when you hit a dial tone, you hear the numbers being pressed, and then boom, you're connected, right? So it was like, as if you're making a phone call.
Mm-hmm. Well, you
And
were. You were literally making a phone call.
because you were literally making a phone call. So I'd be on it for hours.
Hold on, I missed something. What was your first computer? Okay. Someone said that. Are you eating cold grapes? I don't know if you saw that in chat.
No, I did not see that in chat. Um, with No, I am not eating cold grapes. Although I do enjoy frozen grapes. I just enjoy grapes at night, in general. Um, I don't know why. I enjoy eating I enjoy eating grapes and cheese. I'm not a wine and cheese type of person. I've never been a wine and cheese person, but grapes and cheese, yeah, definitely.
Grapes and cheese are good. Okay, so internet. So you were using AOL in the good old dial-up days, where you got hit with double charges. One is potentially a long-distance charge, especially for the wonderful people living in New Jersey or New York, because the New Jersey servers were tended to be more available. But calling from from New York to New Jersey was a long-distance call back in the day.
Yeah, back then, yes.
So yeah. So there's another question from your wonderful wife, which was, what was your first job? So we'll jump around to that. So
Really?
that's a two-parter question. So I'm gonna go with, what was the first? What was your first? What was the first time you got paid to write software? And then the second question is, what is your first job? And they might be the same, but I don't know.
My first job and first time I got paid to write software, it is the same. It was 1997.
Okay.
Working for During the summer, I was a paid summer intern working for a construction company in over by Grand Central. It was in the MetLife building
So now
in
that was
Grand.
high school for you, right?
Yeah, high
Okay.
school. I was I 97. I was a junior. Um,
All right. So you got an
yeah,
internship doing what?
being a computer programmer.
Okay. And what does a
Um,
computer programmer for a construction company do?
you would think that not much, but yeah, It's funny because my boss and I did not meet him before, but former he was a Marine. And so my first day on the job, he came in his full Marine regalia, like hat, outfit, everything, and he made me do 50 push-ups. The first time, the first time he saw me, and then he told me to clean out the server room, which I hated. And then after that, um, um, I was moved out of that team and into the web team, and that's who introduced me to HTML and eventually introduced me to JavaScript. So my first programming job or my first programming task was to um, submit a form. Just get the form submitted, um, which if, at the time
That's
involved
non-trivial at the time.
not trivia at the time, and it involved CGI. By the way, I went CGI scripting, so it was not trivia at all. But that was my first task. It took me the entire summer to submit the form. So it was not a trivia task at all.
Okay. So now you went. So you said you did your 4-year undergrad and then went right and got your master's in networking.
Mm.
So what when you graduated, what did you want to do and what did you end up doing?
Um, so when I graduated, my bachelor's with my bachelor's,
Well, you
uh,
said you went right on to your
and,
master's. No, or I
and
mean, if there was a gap there, then by all
there
means,
wasn't
feel
there
free.
wasn't.
Okay, yeah.
So when I graduated with my master's,
Hmm.
uh, the original intent for me was, hey, you know what? I'm going to see if I could be a webmaster and build websites for clients. So almost be a consultant or be an agency. At the time, I didn't know the term agency. I didn't know what that was, but in my mind, that's pretty much what I was doing. Was being an agent, running myself as an agency,
Okay.
building building websites and I remember one of my first sites that I built. I built an ecom site, which oh my gosh, um, it was a horrible, horrible experience. Um, the creative director for that company, um, I'm not sure why she's a creative director. She was horrible as a creative director. Very nice person, horrible as a creative director. Um, Everything was grayscale. Everything was grid like. Everything. It was just a horrible, horrible um, experience. But nonetheless, built it the way she wanted it. Um, and it sustained me. Um, being a consultant, it sustained me for about 2 years, actually, 2 to 3 years. And then I was like, I don't really want to work for myself. Um, in hindsight, I think it's not that I didn't want to work for myself. It's just I just didn't want to do that. I hate
Hmm.
building web. Uh, and it's funny. I say I hate building websites, and to this day, people still ask me to build websites. Uh,
Well,
um,
there's only a limited amount. I mean, not that there is that many limits, but there's only a limited amount of things you're doing. You're either doing front end dev, which is either app or web, or you're doing back end, which is back end.
mm.
I mean, there's
So
the whole networking. There's a whole bunch of other stuffs, but
I mean,
that's
there's
that's
a
where the
bunch of
money is.
right. I mean, because there's the pipelines. Well, you and I don't even need to go. You already know.
Yeah. Oh,
There's-
but yeah, that stuff didn't exist though when you got
Yeah,
started.
that's true. Most
I
of
mean,
it did
like
not.
there were, no one had a job doing pipelines.
Right, right, right. Not to the degree that it exists today.
No.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
I've
would.
been asked to ask you about the New York City show ticketing company.
Um. Again, another e-com application that I built, called Theater Mania. Um, it was me and this CTO and I. We built the entire e-commerce or ticketing system from the ground up. Um, my first professional programming language was based on Code Fusion.
Okay.
So I was actually Code Fusion certified for about 3 years, 5 years. Um, so yeah, it was I built the ticketing system. So I would buy tickets all the time and take my wife to all these Broadway, off Broadway, and off Broadway shows. Um, so date nights were cool. We went. I remember this one off. We went to this one off Broadway. So there's Broadway, and then there's
Mm-hmm.
off Broadway, and then off Broadway. So we went to an off Broadway show, um, and um, it was very good. I would not lie.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely something different. So you have to, you know, you just got to be open to those type of things. Just Broadway.
So
Typical
dare I
Broadway.
ask, do you remember the name?
Ooh,
And I actually think I can guess.
I don't think I remember the name.
Was it Della Guarda?
I don't think.
Were there people dancing naked upside down? Because you don't forget a play like that.
Well,
On the ceiling,
no,
nonetheless.
no, no,
Okay, then it wasn't that.
no one was dancing naked upside down, but so it was a play and it had four different scenes, and um
I believe
um
it's called Pumpin' Ain't Easy.
well,
At least
scene
that's what
number
your wife says, and she's always right. So
scene number four. I can't believe you just said she's always right. Now I'm going to hear about it. I'm going to hear it. Anyway, so scene number four, um, was about so it was about a homosexual couple, one of which, the the dominant partner was supposed to be some sort of street thug, and the non-dominant one really wasn't, but more the feminine. But they acted out a sex scene, and it was, I mean, like, as violent and as graphic as you could think it would be.
that's New York
It was,
for you.
yeah, it was. I was so my wife and I is like on the edge of our seat, just listening and taking this all. It was definitely it was a fun night. I would admit we've seen some very interesting shows, and my wife and I are huge Cirque du Soleil fans. Um, my wife, Antoinette,
I can see the
huge,
parallel between that.
huge Cirque du Soleil fans, and we've seen a lot of Cirque du Soleil shows, particularly the ones out in Las Vegas. And there's one in Las Vegas called Zumanity, that it's as X-rated, or R-rated, or non non-suited for
Non-kid friendly.
non-kid friendly as you can get with a show like with performances like Cirque du Soleil. It's very very good, but oh man, they pushed the envelope. Um, but yeah, but yeah, yeah. So that's so again, I gave myself a lot of credit, quote unquote, and until the CTO at the time, he left the company. Now he works for Google. At least he's been there. Oh man, I think he's probably worked for Google for at least 10 plus years now. So he may not even be at Google anymore. But still, he now works for Google, uh, or at least that's what his LinkedIn profile says.
The one thing I've noticed little hints here and there is when you tend to learn something, you tend to go for I'm going to call it the piece of paper, but the certification. So like you say, you were cold fusion certified. You're going for your PhD, and you're very close in that process. So how how does that inform your learning journey? And so, like, when you're faced with a new programming language, is it okay? I now have to learn this, so I might as well go down the route of certification, or do you go the route of this is the new hot thing, so I'll go get certified in it, and now that I'm certified in it, I will like with Cold Fusion, for example. So, was it the cert? Did the certification kind of come first, or was it like now that I'm so close to this, I might as well just get it?
It was that. It was the latter. So I am a student. I am a student of technology at heart. So for me, um, getting that recognition of a certification, or in my mind achieving that level of competency to the point where you take an exam, you answer questions, you pass the exam, and now you are certified or recognized as an expert in that subject matter, is a goal, always a goal of mine. um, I think it's not even I think I feel it in my bone, in my spirit, that is something that I always want to do. I always, just because I'm a student of technology. I strive to just be be able to say that I reach a level of standards that I can be now called a subject matter expert in it. Now, not everyone feels the same way, obviously, because not everyone really cares about being certified, nor do they even care about being a subject matter expert, nor do they even gauge or measure themselves as subject matter experts via getting a certification. That's not that's it's not something that everyone um, cares about, but um, you know, it's one of those things that um, 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 you know, it's a way for me to measure. Honestly, it's a way for me to gauge and measure my skills, and then on top of that, um, um, you know, the certification itself, the paper itself, I tend to think, in my mind, it then turns into something that demands more money.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Oh, it
right.
does.
So again, with the paper demanding more money, me being the type of person that I am, I'm constantly trying to uh, measure my knowledge and stay on the cutting edge of technology. Um, that's my way of measuring whether or not I'm still relevant in this arena called tech.
Okay.
Uh, so
Now I happen to know that you jumped into a startup somewhat recently.
mhm.
What were you doing before that, and what what attracted you to this startup, and like what was your thinking of going into something so risky? Risky is the wrong word for it, but just something so different. Startups are just a
Yeah.
beast unto themselves.
Okay. Yeah. So before I joined the startup, I was director of technology or director of online technology at Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts in New York City. Uh, so responsible for overall technology on the 13 acres of the Lincoln Center campus. And I say overall online technology. And I say overall because each of the 13 constituents on that campus had their own internal technical group. But each of the 13 constituents on that campus also relied on the backbone that I was responsible for. So part of that, and my wife and my I shouldn't even say my entire family. Well, my wife, she loved that job because it exposed or it allowed you know we had a chance to see bunch of again bunch of shows, bunch of artists, uh, uh, but at the same time, you know, it was Lincoln Center is not a rinky dink fly by night
No,
non.
it's a large business.
It's a large business, so so I learned a lot, made some good friends there, but it's a large business. Now, so I will be very, very honest and I'll flat out say it. I, I'm much more comfortable, um, and I feel like I'm a serial startup. I wouldn't necessarily call myself a serial entrepreneur. Um, Definitely a serial startup B. I don't know, however you want to term it. Um, so prior to the startup that led me to where I'm at today, I worked at three different other startups. Some of them failed miserably. Others were pretty successful. But nonetheless, they were all startups that I enjoyed. And then a recruiter called me up and said, "Hey, D, you know what? I have a startup that's looking for a CTO. Um, they need somebody to help build their analytics platform, their API, and everything else." So I met with them. We clicked, and I was like, "You know what? I'm." They said that the magic words. We're going to generate crap load of data, um, be our CTO, ground up. I said, all right, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna take the chance. Now, my wife, she's very, very supportive, but I could tell she's like, oh man, here we go again, because because again, like I said, I was part of three other startups for that. Uh, so she's like, oh my gosh, here we go again. Um, and she didn't have to say it. I could hear it in her head, in my head. But um, I love building products. I love launching products. Um, the ups and downs and the dramas and the funs and the feeling of accomplishment when you cross it over that finish line. It being the product is something that's intoxicating. I absolutely enjoy doing that. So took a chance. Um, and that startup was eventually brought out by a bigger company, and they moved myself and my family down to Tennessee, leaving New York City behind. You know, I every day I wonder if that was a good move or not for my family, because I honestly am not sure yet. Uh, but that remains to be seen. I hope I made the best move. But yeah, but startup life is something that I absolutely enjoy.
Well, you made the move, so it's the best move.
I made the move. I would
You
agree. I
can't
made.
you can't have made any other move than the you made.
Mm, you sound like a philosopher, my friend.
I've been called that before.
Uh,
So now, if you could go back and talk to your let's go back your 13-year-old self, and you had like 20 minutes to just give some advice, and it couldn't include stock symbols, what would it be?
it could not.
Yeah, you can't just be like Apple, Amazon, Google. It's like you can't just
Mm,
spurt out stock symbols. Like that's missing the point. Like if it doesn't have to be tech advice. It could be true to yourself. Don't be an idiot and give that one kid pay that one kid for bad drugs. Like I mean, I assume it's not that, but I mean,
yeah, I got you. Well, um, I would tell I would tell myself, hey, don't be a knucklehead that summer and stay and stay indoors and not mess up your knee. Um, I would also tell myself, hey, when you were talking about learning to ride a motorcycle and everything else, um, do it sooner rather than later, so that way you know um, you would enjoy the feeling of the wind therapy sooner rather than later. Um, and then, believe it or not, last thing I would tell myself is, hey, you know what? Um, a- After you got hurt playing football, well, after you hurt your knee, so you stopped playing football. Maybe you should have curbed your diet so that way, because you're not being as athletic, you're not moving around as much, but which means you can't eat like you used to. Um, so I would have cautioned my younger self about that. Uh, so yeah, those are three things.
okay. Now, there's a whole lot of people out there who are choosing tech as a I'm going to call it a second career, but that also just for people later on in life. So there's, people who've chosen to be, a parent, a parent first instead of taking necessarily a career, and now they want to learn. I'm going to just broadly say technology, just because it, as you know, it's a huge, gigantic, broad category. But
Hmm.
what advice? So having seen and kind of grown up with it, and had this knowledge, but also from your perspective of where you are in your career, what what advice would you give to someone who, especially now maybe in quarantine, who's kind of redefining themselves? What advice would you give to them about getting involved in technology and possibly even startups, because you have experience there as well?
The first piece of advice that I would give is please do um, please do your research in the company itself that you're trying to join as a startup. And it doesn't need to be thorough research. Like, I'm not saying that you need to investigate everybody in the company, or am I saying that you need to dive into their political background, or owners and stuff like that. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is understand the product that they're trying to build, understand the timeline, understand the constraints, understand the team that you are potentially joining or managing or inheriting, what have you, and understand the product team's vision. I think above all else, if you have a competent product team and you can just work with that team or work with that product owner, um, it will make um, your journey in the startup world a lot easier. Um, I've been again been part of startups where the product team, product owner clashed with the engineering team, technology, and what ended up happening was uh, the the product owner um, ultimately led to the disbandment of the engineering team, which then led to the company um, um, letting go of the engineering team, which then led to the company never really fulfilling that particular product because no one wanted because the product owner was so combative that no one wanted to work with him, and the reputation grew, and it was just an ugly situation. So understanding the team, understanding the product, understanding um, um, the business, I think is extremely important. The other piece of advice is, oh my gosh, the other piece of advice is um, make sure you have a very strong sense of work life. What happens with startups happens all the time. That because it's a startup, you pour all of your energy, you pour all of your time, you pour all of yourself into this startup. That you get burnt, you burn out easily, you get tired, you get frustrated. You know, it becomes a hostile thing for you because you don't want to get up out of bed and go to this office because it's a startup environment and you have to wear 10 or 12 different hats because it's startup, right? And so it burns you out, um, and as exciting as it is, as as critical your role is, because in a startup, everybody's role is critical.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what you do, you could be the one that just, restocks the fridge. Doesn't matter. Everybody's role is critical. Um, and but but because you invest so much of yourself into this startup, because you want to see it be successful, you want to see it launch, you want to see it get off the ground, you want to see it be profitable, because you always get, I don't know about something. For me, I always envision walking into my startup, and I say my, walking to a startup that I work for, and one day, and realizing, wow, it started with just 5 people. Now it's a company with 25,000 people, but multi-billion-dollar company, right? And I'm walking through the halls. It's just like, wow, I could recognize and call out everybody that I meet in the hall by first name. Right? So you put yourself in that situation, and you dive, and you invest so much of yourself, so much of your energy, that sooner or later you don't have a real life outside of it, and then you burn out, and
Mm-hmm.
you know then the sense of then that sense of, like, wanting to see the startup be successful is replaced with, you know what, I can't stand this, I got to find someplace else. And at that point, your work starts to suffer. um, you start to suffer. It no longer becomes a fun place to be. Yeah. So work life balance, particularly with startups, extremely important. And then finally, the culture of the startup is extremely important.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You know, I've I've been in some very toxic startups. Everything from me walking in the door and the CEO is 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 he's in his office smoking weed in his office to 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 you know uh, to the leadership uh, folks of the startup are sleeping with each other to the political the politics and the money laundering it becomes a serious thing. Not even becomes is a serious thing, serious subject.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so federal investigations and blah, like it's retarded. Um, so just understanding the politics of the politics and the chemistry and the culture of the startup. Um, I mean, not don't get me wrong. Everywhere you go, there's politics.
Mm-hmm.
So so developing some thick skin, would help. But absolutely, recognizing the culture and saying to yourself, "All right, am I good with dealing with this type of culture?" Yeah, is important, extremely important.
All right, so I'm gonna open it up. If there's any questions, please throw them in chat. And while we're waiting for questions to roll in, do you have any questions for me?
Yeah. So you know, um, much the same. And I'm well aware of your startup-y entrepreneurial spirit. Um, so would you say that being an entrepreneur uh, has jaded you from the rest of the corporate America? Can you see yourself working in any other environment outside of being a startup entrepreneur type of spirit? Or
Um, so I I'm drawn to startups because I I love seeing ideas come to fruition. So I'm a lofty idealist, and I like having crazy ideas, and I like seeing them be created, and I especially love seeing the impact. So, if I create an e-commerce platform, having people make sales makes me feel awesome because I'm like, wow, someone else is benefiting off of this piece of software I created.
mm,
Or, for example, long time ago, I created an online role playing game. And at one point, I had 2,000 players, and some of them were voluntarily just giving me money.
mm,
It's like, hey, I really love what you're doing. Keep up the work. We keep the servers on, things like that. So the fact that people were appreciating my work and, on a daily basis, people were logging in and using their turns and doing like that, that feeling that I was doing good and was being valued.
mm,
That's really what I drive for. So that's not necessarily limited to a startup. But in a large corporation, it is very easy to get stuck as a cog that does not see direct value. So, if you're on the sales side, you actually can kind of get that in a sense because you're bringing on a new client. You get to see the money coming in and see how that affects and helps your business. But then you also get to hopefully you're selling a product that has value to the customer. So there are definitely jobs that I could fit into and roll into that. My skill set happens to be in technology, which is why that's where I get thrown. Um, Although I can see myself, right now we're both at a large company,
mm,
and more on the product side of things is where I think my skill set would be best utilized.
right.
But that said, you also have to understand, like, you can't always chase your passion, and that's not always a bad thing.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
there's ditches that need to be dug, and I say that metaphorically and physically. Like, not every, nobody aspires to, or I shouldn't say that. Most people, I assume, don't aspire to be a garbage man, but we need garbage men, and I think it is a worthy job, and I think it's worthy of a livable wage, and I think we need people who are going to pick up your garbage and throw them on a truck, and we need people who are going to sort through that garbage when it get like, we need all of these. Like, no one strives to work at McDonald's, but I think we need McDonald's workers and we need McDonald's managers and things like that. And I think there's
Yeah.
absolutely nothing wrong with, not always working your dream job. But that's why I do things like this. So I always have something going on the side. I always have weird little side projects, and that gets my itch out to create and build.
Mm.
Because startups are hard, and startups are risky, and startups are extremely political, and sometimes when you take that desire for success, or you rework that success, so like, if success means putting food on the table, that's really hard for a startup. Whereas if success is just putting out a product and having someone use it and maybe making some pocket cash, that's wonderful. So you can have that day job that pays that, and then kind of get the itch out by doing projects like this.
Now, do you turn it around and say, "Hey," because I know you have a son.
Mm-hmm.
Do you turn it around and share your thoughts with your son, or do you foster the same type of thinking with your son, or no?
Um,
Or
so
I mean,
that's, and it's an interesting question because I have one kid. I have never been a parent before. My son is 9,
mm,
and I don't. I know I will never get another chance to do it again. In the
mm,
sense that, like, I'm not planning on having another kid, and he's only going to be a certain age once, always. I try and, right now, I think my overarching goals are expose him to as much as I possibly can.
mm,
So expose him to gardening, expose him to sports, expose him to Legos, expose him to robotics, expose him to like anything and everything. Throw it in front of him and give him enough time to really make a decision: does he enjoy it or not? And if he enjoys it, figure out a positive way to let him keep doing that. And that's that I think is, like, boiled down, that along with being a good civically minded person. So understanding that volunteering is really important in your community, and understanding that what equality is and what equity is and what privilege is.
mm,
So that's the social aspect, and then the mental aspect is, like I said before. So I try and keep it simple, because I know I'm going to make mistakes, and I know I'm going to mess up. I'm not a perfect human being. And if I make things too complicated, then you have all these conflicts. It's like, well, I have rule A and rule C, and they conflict. Whereas if it's like, no, is this exposing him to something new, and is it helping him find new things? Yes, it is. Okay, great. Let's just go out and do it and try it. And if he doesn't like it, no big deal. We move on to the next thing.
you know, it's
Now, you're a dad of 2, and they're a little bit
I'm
older, so you
too.
have a little more experience. But
Yeah,
what has driven you, and how have you know?
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm excited to my kids, 19 and 12. That by the end of this month it'll be 20 and 13. The last week of the month is their birthday. Uh, uh, it's one of the most difficult and rewarding and humbling experiences is to be a dad. Um, my both my kids, I feel like, absolutely adores their mom. Um, um, and I don't blame them. I mean, I married her, so I gotta
I hope you adore her too.
adore. But to watch my kids, to watch my sons grow up into adult men, and to say to myself that I contributed to their outcome, and to their personality, and to their life as productive human beings in society, um, is a humbling experience. It's also probably one of the most difficult things I've had to do, because, yeah, I'm constantly second guessing and wondering, am I doing it right? It being to your point, am I doing it? Am I being a dad right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, um, you know, it's one of the most difficult things to consider, especially with what's going on nowadays in the world. Um, how do you prepare it? And it really has nothing to do with race at this particular statement. But how do you prepare a young man to face the world with everything else going on? Like, I feel like there's no way we can give them enough knowledge to face every single scenario. Um,
But is that the goal? Like, I
you
mean,
know,
do you have all the knowledge necessary? Like, you've lived at least twice as much as they have. And do you think you have enough knowledge to face the world?
I don't.
So then it's completely unreasonable to think that you
Well,
who do not have all the knowledge could pass and
listen,
then give all the knowledge to someone else.
listen. Valid statements. Valid statements. But as a dad, right? As a dad raising a son, raising a boy, um, you know, I you want to make them as prepared as possible, and you wish and you pray to God that you gave them all of the knowledge that you had, and so that way they could go out and build on top of that. I wish to God that I had that I knew everything, so that way, when they ask a question, I can give them the answer. But to your point, it's not realistic.
And there is no
Nor
answer
nor
either.
Yeah, nor is it achievable, right? It's not realistic. It's don't To your point, no real answer. So why even bother? But you know,
Well, that's I hope that's not what you pulled out of here. Is why even
well,
bother?
well,
It's that
the last
you're.
part that's where the humbling piece come in, because you humble yourself and you realize, you know what, you give them enough tools and knowledge, so that way so that way they do become men who can stand on their own 2 feet,
Well,
right?
I think the key here is giving them the right tools.
Hmm.
Because if you give someone a hammer and you give someone wood and you give someone nails, they can build a house.
Well,
Now,
if
you
you
don't have to give them the entire knowledge. They can figure it out. Now, yeah, you totally could. You could spend the time figuring out, it's like the perfect iframe studs should be every 16, every 16 inches. You this type of wood, things like. But at the end of the day, we didn't know any of that stuff. We didn't have pressure treated wood 200 years ago, But that said, you still had a hammer and you still had nails. And you gave people the tools, and that's I think the key. And that's so bringing it back to technology, it's understanding. For me, the critical piece is always knowing what the tools are, what the
Mm,
tools are good at, and more importantly, what the tools are not good at, and helping to guide someone and say, these are the tools that are really important that you need to know. These are the tools that are kind of nice to have.
mm,
And here are the things you can build. Go build something awesome.
mm. Valid,
Because
valid.
that's attainable. You can do that.
Yeah, valid. Like I said, it's Not only is it attainable, but it's actually admirable. Um, I just pray that I give my boys enough of the tools. Um,
I have a
so
feeling you have. If you walk in on your kid and he's playing Call of Duty and he's cursing out some other kid, then no, you need to maybe have a sit down.
yeah, see,
But
well
if he's
then,
out there cheering his team on and rooting them on and helping them practice, then I think you've done a good job.
yeah, well then I get both of those. I mean,
Uh oh.
I, I walk in on my son and he's playing, well, not Call of Duty.
Well,
Uh,
yeah,
he's playing Rainbow Six,
sorry.
and he's cursing somebody out. I'm like, come, both my boys. My one son is playing Destiny. The other one's playing Rainbow Six. Both of them are cursing somebody out. Uh, but then, you know, but then I can turn to both my sons and say, look, in the particular sport that you play, you need to be a leader, and then and not it's one thing to and I know you joke around, you guys make fun of each other on the field or the court or wherever,
Yeah.
but but at some point you need to lift them up too. And so to watch my youngest son, for example, um, teach or help correct some of the rookies in their stances and their technique. Um, I could appreciate that, right? Because that's him passing on his knowledge to someone that he's never met before,
Hmm.
never played the sport before, but yet here he is passing on the knowledge and tips and like, look, if you do it this way, this and that, right? And the look of appreciation from that other player who's like deers in a headlight, who's about to strap on a helmet and try to hit somebody for the first time, and they're like, what did I sign up for? because because you could quite literally see the deer and headlight effect, like, whoa, this is happening. um and then to hear my son encourage him, like, oh yeah, get it, push, or drive your feet, and then walking up giving high fives, like, good job. And then you can see the other kid, like, oh man, like, he said it was a good job, so it must have been a good job. Those moments.
Yeah.
Yeah, those moments. I would 100% agree. Those moments. All right. Any other questions? I feel like my
No, I'm
laptop.
good, and chat has been quiet. So yeah, it's So thank you, D, for coming on and chatting. This has been fun. So yeah, so no, I
Yeah.
really appreciate you coming out, and thanks for the chat. Thanks for the advice. I think it's good. If anyone has any questions or comments, you can certainly leave them in the YouTube comments, and I'll make sure that D gets them and hopefully can answer. Otherwise, yeah, everybody, thank you for stopping by. I really appreciate it. I will not be around next week because I'm on a vacation. But
Mm,
after that, we'll be keeping this up and doing this once a week.
enjoy.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.